So we'll get started. The time's approximately now 7 o'clock. I'd like to welcome each and every one of you to the April Champions Call. Again, this call is going to be focused on how do we create value to our members in a virtual meeting space. Because the key thing is that we don't want to lose the connection that we have with our club members. Even though we're going to be doing it in a virtual environment, we don't know the end date for that. We don't want to lose that connection. We want to be able to keep cultivating and building on that relationship, helping them to achieve the goals that they've set for 2020 for themselves. We always want to be moving things forward. And in today's call, we have 3 speakers, which will cover different topics, which I'll have here on the PowerPoint. And at the end of their presentation, there'll be some time for Q&A. So if you'd like to unmute your phone and ask a question, or you can go to the service bar, which is either at the top or the bottom of your screen. You hit the more, move it over to chat, and the chat function will pop up. And then you can ask a question in chat. So we'll start with our first presenter. And I will stop my video so all eyes will be on them. This will be our agenda for today. We're going to have Cassandra Lee talk about engagement is the key. Then we'll move into Lamont's presentation on isolated but not alone. And I just remembered something real quick. Oh, looks like she's already got the recording going perfect. Then Lamont will talk about isolated but not alone. And then CJ will talk about creating value. And at the end, I will talk about basically what we covered here, as well as introduce some new kind of a professional development series we're going to be looking to do possibly in the next couple weeks. So I will tell you a little bit about our first presenter. All right, Cassandra Lee, the secret of Toastmasters is that it provides you with the transferable skills you can use in the real world. Past district director and distinguished Toastmaster Cassandra Lee, or as it says, Cassandra Diva of Dialogue Lee, has taken full advantage of this fun fact. From a leader in District 30 to a leader in District 103, she has grown as a communicator, leader, professional because of her Toastmaster experience. So I hand everything over to Cassandra Lee.
Thanks, Arturo, and good evening, everyone in District 30 and all of our guests that may be a part of this call. I want to give you the opportunity to know more about my involvement in Toastmasters as I talk about this concept of engagement is the key. Tonight, as I go through this concept, there were 3 key areas that came to mind that I thought would be important for me to share some additional insight on. And those 3 topic areas are the concepts of longevity, variety, as well as interactivity. Now, of course, I'll go more in depth about each one of those areas, yet those were the 3 areas that came to mind immediately for me when I was invited to be a part of this call. I think also those 3 topic areas will tie in very nicely with the upcoming speakers as well. They will more than likely expand more upon what I will share with you, and you'll begin to see that those concepts are a running thread. We know we are now in a time that is very unprecedented. We've never been in a situation like this in our lives, in our careers, or even in Toastmasters. Engagement is the key. We know with Toastmasters, being at a club meeting gives us engagement. Yeah, how on earth do we do engagement in this virtual world? Well, that's why we're here tonight, and that's what you'll learn from the 3 of us as we give you insight. Speaking of insight, let me share something with you. One of my favorite resources that I keep handy simply because I'm a district leader and I'm also an advisor this year to our District 103 trio, and I find I use very heavily the District Leadership Handbook. And something caught my eye about 2 years ago with the District Leadership Handbook. There was a quote that I ran across that reminded me that members join Toastmasters to become more effective communicators and leaders. Well, we already knew that. I knew that at the time as well. Yet the quote goes on to say that people stay in Toastmasters because the club meets their individual needs. A quality club environment is the single most important factor in membership retention, and quality clubs provide the greatest opportunity for each member to develop communication and leadership skills. Okay, perhaps for me that quote resonated because I am a former program quality director, and I wasn't just a program quality director, I was an award-winning program quality director where I did focus in on quality, where I did focus in on member retention, and I did focus in on making certain that the members of our clubs across District 30 could have what they needed to have in order to grow as communicators and leaders. That quote resonated with me then. That quote still resonates with me now. And I want you to understand that quote is the foundation for engagement is the key. We're in the club environment to practice the skills of communication and leadership. We're also in the club environment to have the club develop us in ways that we can use outside of the club environment. Yet that club must have a quality environment. Now, of course, when we're in the meeting environment, we have the meeting agenda, which includes the various aspects, which actually leads to one of the points I'll talk about in a moment. However, the other side of what's happening in our clubs is the fact that we want to have quality so members can grow. So let's talk about the growth. And the first point I wanted to bring up is longevity. It is very important during this time that our club officers let members know and help members to feel secure that there will still be longevity of the club. Some of our clubs have been around for more than 5 years, more than 20 years, more than 30 years. We can't lose them right now because we're in a virtual situation. Yet some of our clubs are less than 5 years old, maybe even just 6 months old. What do they do in this moment? We don't want to lose them either. Longevity is so important to build during this time. We want our club members to know that in a virtual moment, our clubs can still exist. Beyond a virtual moment, our clubs will still be there. Well, I charge the club officers with the ones being able to establish longevity. See, I say the club officers are the ones being charged with longevity, and that's because the club officers are already managing the club. Now, of course, we can talk about managing the club from the standpoint of looking at the district or the Distinguished Club Program, meaning the DCP. They do that anyway. They're monitoring that all the time. Yet I want to take it a step further, or I should say, take it a step back. And when I talk about the longevity in a virtual moment or in virtual meetings and club officers being responsible for that, I'm going back to the basics of club officers just simply making sure meetings are happening. Plan meetings, plan special events, plan an opportunity to come together, to have camaraderie, even if you don't call it a meeting. Now, of course, if you get together, we're going to consider that to be a meeting. Yet the idea is just because you cannot meet physically, club officers, do not let your members think that there is no reason to meet. I belong to a club, and I'll tell you, our meeting, our last meeting in March, was jeopardized due to the fact that we meet at a public library, and of course the city of Chicago shut everything down and no library is open anymore. So that meant our March 28th meeting got canceled. Not of our doing. Yet none of the members or even club officers inquired about the meeting happening. So of course, being the club sponsor and the club mentor, I reached out to all of the club officers and said, hey, we need to do an emergency club executive committee meeting and talk about how we're going to still have our meeting on March 28th. We had a great meeting, yet one of the things that resonated with me from that meeting was recognizing my club officers thought, they assumed that the meeting was not going to happen because they saw on the news that all the public libraries were closed. I was somewhat perplexed. And I said to them, no one bothered to call me, send a text, drop an email, float a balloon in the sky to say, hey, Cassandra, are we still going to meet? Because we didn't have our meeting on the 14th. We lost a meeting in February. A meeting in January got canceled too, all due to what was happening with the Chicago Public Library system. In that meeting, like I told our officers, I said, hey, listen, we needed to do this emergency meeting because we could not sit around and just assume that the club was not going to meet. Since we've already lost for our club various meetings, we needed to at least come together and strategize as to how we could meet. Now, if we had decided collectively that the meeting would be canceled, that would have been okay. I said, but is there really a reason to cancel our meeting? And the officers admitted, no, let's test out this virtual situation and let's go ahead and move forward with our meeting on the 28th. And I'm glad to say that the meeting went extremely well. However, our officers were not thinking about keeping the meeting going. Club officers, longevity is on your shoulders. I encourage you to consider, how can you still have a club meeting in a virtual environment, even when members may feel uncomfortable, or even when this virtual technology is being used for the first time? What hurdles can you get over? What comfort can you provide? Yet, what can you do to make certain the club is still functioning in this virtual moment? Longevity, club officers, that's the first thing to consider. Second concept to consider is the concept of variety. Now, of course, the vice president of education is the one that's charged with establishing the meeting agenda and making certain that there is variety at every club meeting. Well, it gets a little tricky in a virtual situation with this concept of variety. We know a standard Toastmaster meeting already has variety. We have the prepared speeches. We have the table topic segment. We have the table topic segment, or I said that already, didn't I? Speech evaluations, that's the one I'm leaving out. But I can't forget also the club business meeting. Four natural variety aspects of our club meetings already happen when we're face to face. Prepared speeches, table topics, speech evaluations, business meeting. That varies from meeting to meeting depending upon what else you may have going on. Face to face, we can bring in guest speakers. Face to face, we can do educational workshops. Face to face, we can do training on pathways. Can't we still do that in a virtual situation too? I say, yeah, yes, we can. We can still include variety in our virtual meeting. See, we know that Toastmaster meetings provide us with engagement. That engagement comes in a variety of interactions. In a virtual meeting, we can still include those different interactions. It simply will look a little different because now we're screen to screen, we're not face to face. However, it can still occur. So I say, when you're putting together vice presidents of educations, the agenda for your virtual meeting, still include the standard, the prepared speeches, the table topics, the speech evaluations, your business meeting. Yet from time to time, depends upon how many meetings you have in a month, you can change up that meeting agenda slightly by including a guest speaker or having a pathways training. Now, when I say pathways training, I'm really saying tap into those videos on Toastmasters International website, play a few of those or at least one of them that will help to train your members on pathways during this time. So don't think that I'm saying reinvent the wheel on pathways. I'm really saying use the resources that are out there. So whether it's an educational workshop on how to listen or resolving conflict or even how to write a speech introduction, you can still have a level of variety in your meetings while you include the type of variety that's already in a standard format. We know that members learn and grow and develop from the variety that's included in our face-to-face meetings. When we're in this virtual space, don't X out the variety. Keep the variety and be strategic with the type of variety that you include. That way your members can still grow and develop. Now that leads me to my final point. And that final point is interactivity. I know in my club environment, my members get together and ooh, do we have a good time. Sometimes I just sit back in meetings and I observe and I watch how they interact with each other. They love on each other, they hug on each other, they can't wait to see each other. They're saving seats for one another, meaning that camaraderie is there. They are challenging each other. Ooh, you didn't do that role last time, you in that role this time, good for you. They are constantly finding a way to have that interactivity and that connection. Face to face, it's easy to do that. In a virtual situation, it'll be somewhat challenging. However, we can still bring in a level of interactivity. See, when I think about interactivity in a virtual setting that still allows for engagement, I'm thinking about similar things as Arturo pointed out for this call tonight. Remember, Arturo said there's a chat feature. You can type in your questions. I'm thinking we can use the chat feature in our virtual meetings. I was on a call earlier today with Zoom, and I see that Zoom did some upgrades over the weekend, and they had this little icon, and I can't even remember what the category was that it's under, but it gave you the opportunity to do a hand applause. You clicked an icon and the hand applause was there, or you clicked the icon and a thumbs up symbol came on the screen as well. Those are different ways to interact, and right now they're building it right into the platform. Speaking of the platform you use will usually help to influence the level of interactivity that you can have in your meetings. A moment ago, CJ Powers was mentioning the Google Meetings that he was using. Google Meeting is slightly different from Zoom, and Zoom is slightly different from Adobe Connect, and Adobe Connect is different from WebEx, and WebEx is different from freeconferencecall.com. And I didn't even say all of the platforms that exist. I simply mentioned the ones that I'm aware of and or have used. See, every platform will give you a different way to be engaged. We know in a meeting, we have members that can be engaged with a smile, with the applause, with a hug, with a speech, or even with a report. How can we include that in a virtual setting? In many respects, the same way. We can still have speeches. We can still have speech evaluations. We can still use the tools of the platform to do the applause. Now, we may not be able to hug each other, and you might not be able to see everyone smiling unless you know the tricks like Arturo does, and you can put everybody's face on the screen at one time. Yet the key is find out what your platform offers so that way you can inform your members how to be engaged. The chat feature is one of the most common ways to make certain that your members can be interactive in a session. Yet depends upon what type of variety you're including in your meeting. You may be able to put them in breakout rooms, or you might be able to do a poll. It simply depends upon what you decide that works best for your platform and your group. Yet remember, it's about quality. It's about still giving our members a club environment that's helping them to grow as communicators, that's helping to develop them as leaders. Yes, we won't see them face to face. Yet, yes, we can still provide engagement in our meetings. Virtual or not, the meeting should still be happening. Yet now our creativity is being tested, our skills are being stretched, yet we can still have meetings that are being filled with that engagement by making certain we're focused on longevity, variety, and interactivity. Fellow Toastmasters, I thank you for giving me the time to share with you my nuggets of wisdom on this concept. And I really want you to use your collectiveness, meaning your team collectiveness with your executive members as well as your club members. Talk it out, figure it out if you need to, yet do not let your club meetings die out. Remember, your club exists for your growth and development, and your club exists for the growth and development of those to come after you. Make certain your club is still around for that to happen. Thanks for listening. Mr. Facilitator, thanks, Arturo.
Great information, Cassandra. Really being able to hit the mark on the different things that we can do with our clubs to ensure we still have that engagement. So if you have a specific question to ask Cassandra, unmute your phone or whatever device you're using to get the audio here on the Zoom webinar and ask her a question. I'll open up for about 2 to 3 questions or just 2 questions before we go to Lamont.
Cassandra, Larry New.
Hey, Larry.
I'm happy you were able to come and share that with us. I'm very happy that you're still engaged and involved in District 30. I know you're part of District 30 ultimately, but I'm so happy that you keep coming back and joining us. I think you made some very valid points. I think that no matter what platform you're at, no matter what system you're on, whether you're in a physical place like a restaurant or a physical place like a room, you have to make adjustments for the place that you are meeting. And I think that's a very appropriate comment. So thank you, my dear.
You're so welcome, Larry. Thank you.
I don't know if you can hear me,
Yes.
Cassandra?
Yes.
Oh, good. I wasn't sure. Oh, good. I was just going to say, when you were speaking, I just realized that when you said, you know, embrace virtual, like you embrace an in-person meeting, well, when we really look at it, how much of our lives really have been embraced by TV? And isn't that virtual? And haven't we been really connected to TV? And all we are doing right now is actually creating it a little bit more personal, a little bit more of a personal connection to other people in a different kind of way. But it is virtual, like a TV.
Yeah, that's a good observation. Or even I was thinking too, Marco Polo is one of those features that my niece has on her phone, or the Google Plus. Those are other ways too. So you're right. We are in a virtual world in a different way, yet that was a good way to remind us that's transferable.
Yeah,
We're in that now. So thanks for that. Yeah.
sure.
Fantastic. And I'll show the group as a whole. If you look at the participant list here, go down to more, you have the option of clapping hands or a thumbs up. That's what Cassandra was alluding to there. Excellent. We'll move on to our next speaker, and that will be Lamont Boyd, isolated but not alone. Lamont Boyd, ACB, ALB, has been a Toastmaster since 2015 with the Be Confident, Be Strong Club in Naperville. During his time in Toastmasters, Lamont has served as club president twice, area director twice, and he's currently West Division Director for District 30. Under his leadership, he has helped his club in Area 73 achieve distinguished status. Here to deliver his speech entitled Isolated but Not Alone, Creating Virtual Meeting Intimacy, please welcome Lamont Boyd.
Thank you, Arturo, and our fellow Toastmasters. Here we are. 297 million of us are in some form of a stay-at-home order. To date, there's roughly 2 billion worldwide that are under some type of stay-at-home order. Make no doubt about it, we're isolated. But don't you dare get down, because we're not alone. This COVID-19 virus has changed everything as we know it. And all you need to do is turn on your local TV channel to hear about all of the negative impacts that's happening to all of us across the world. However, I am going to lean upon my optimism and turn to you leaders of clubs, of areas, of divisions, and ask you to look at this from a different perspective, that there's an opportunity that through the introduction of virtual meetings to Toastmasters, we actually have an opportunity to create virtual meeting intimacy. Now, let me start with the definition of that word intimacy. It's taken from the root of the word intimate, which means marked by very close association, contact, or familiarity. So essentially, what I am going to try to help us talk through is how to create closer association, contact, or familiarity through the use of virtual meetings in Toastmasters. So I'd like for you to walk with me a little bit as we explore 5 ways that may help build virtual meeting intimacy. The first one is define your virtual strategy. Now, when you invite some friends over for a nice intimate dinner, you actually plan for that event. When you talk about defining your virtual strategy, I'm talking to you club officers. You all should be meeting on a regular and consistent basis to define your strategy for leading your club forward in this virtual environment. What is that going to look like? What are the goals that you still have yet to pursue? Remember, your term isn't over until June 30th. So there's still work to be done, and there's a lot of members that still need to be supported. After all, leadership does drive culture. So it's up to you, through defining your virtual strategy, to understand exactly the culture you want to create in our new virtual world. I love this quote that really, really stresses the importance of strategy. In moments like this, we do need clarity and focus, but it starts at the club level that can then be transferred to member by member. Next, I'd like to talk about constructing your virtual meeting. So again, using the analogy of inviting some friends over for an intimate get-together, you have to set the mood. What are you going to serve? What are you going to talk about during dinner? This is all about the actual structure and the foundation of your club meeting. Cassandra touched on a lot of wonderful points, and I'll just reiterate just some. Are the invites in your members' calendars? Sometimes those reminders are sometimes the only way that our members know that there is still going to be a meeting. Make sure it's out there. Have the VPEs reach out and make sure that agenda is full. There are roles to be filled. There are speakers who need to speak. Information that needs to be shared, ideas that can be exchanged. How are we engaging our members to show them just because it's a virtual meeting, it's business as usual? We still have to fill up this agenda to have a really strong and effective meeting. Ensure you reach out. And are the meeting Toastmasters comfortable facilitating and hosting simultaneously? This is one lesson that I've learned in hosting a virtual meeting and being a part of a virtual meeting, that you want your facilitators to be comfortable, not only facilitating a Toastmaster meeting, but also being able to navigate very easily using whatever virtual meeting software or platform you want to use. So it is important that you don't put a newbie or a novice as your Toastmaster at your meeting, not at least until they've had an opportunity to observe and learn from one of your more seasoned Toastmasters. So it is important that to set the tone for your virtual meetings correctly, that you use one of your more seasoned speakers to be a Toastmaster for that meeting. Because after all, this is true wherever, whether it's virtual or in person. Every member's experience is defined at how they feel at the club meeting. Next, let's talk about our third step, close ranks. I love this image because it really speaks to what this actual term close ranks mean, which means to unite in order to defend common interests. In this case, you are defending the interest and the goals of your members. First and foremost, during this time of isolation, make sure that you have reached out to every individual member of your club and had a conversation with them about how they're feeling. Because the reality, some people have lost their jobs as a result of this COVID-19 situation. So it's important to first lead with empathy, check in on them just to see how they're doing overall, and then move into conversations around their level of involvement and engagement and enthusiasm to still be involved in Toastmasters. See if they'd be open to doing a speech or volunteering for a role. Let Toastmasters meetings be a source of motivation and inspiration for your club members to work on their personal development, to sharpen some skills, whether it's to help them continue to improve in their current workspace or to help them prepare for the potential to find a new job opportunity. But definitely let's close ranks and discuss, importantly, how we can support them specifically. One of the things that I've learned as a leader in Toastmaster and just in corporate, you can't lead everybody the same. You have to make sure that you are paying attention to the individual needs of each member and tailoring your leadership style to support that particular member. Next, let's leverage our seasoned club speakers as mentors. Mentors for your newer members, because as I've spoken at different clubs, they've got new members who are less than 6 months into Toastmasters. Why not lean on our seasoned club members to help mentor them? Also, leverage your more experienced Toastmasters to serve as your early adopters of the virtual meeting. Put them in the forefront. Let them do some speeches to help everyone see, hey, it's not that bad. In actuality, it's even more fun. Help them volunteer for roles that help to set the tone for how the meetings are. I mentioned earlier, let them be a Toastmaster so that the vibe and the feeling of the spirit of Toastmasters is still felt strongly, even in a virtual meeting. Also, mentors are an excellent source of inspiration and encouragement for other members to support and participate. If they respect a seasoned member, then that member reaching out to them to encourage them to do a speech or volunteer for a role may be just the push that they need to step in and volunteer. The last and final step, ask for help. Now, this has come in two forms. As a club officer, you have an area director that's available to help you. You have a West Division director or a division director who can help you. You also have the district trio. We have been there and done that 3, 4, 5, maybe more times over. So there's probably nothing you're experiencing, challenges, struggles that we haven't dealt with ourselves. My hat's off to the District 30 trio for really rolling out the idea of the virtual meetings and all of the trainings. There's training that's available on the D30 website. There is help that you can get. And oh, by the way, one other great opportunity that you have with the virtual meetings, go visit other clubs. You would be amazed. There are some amazing clubs in your area, in your division, that you can visit that are phenomenal at doing virtual meetings. I was just at a meeting with Beyond the Seas, which is a really strong club in Area 71. They had 5 speakers in their virtual meeting. The meeting was an hour and a half, and the speakers ranged from newbies to your seasoned speakers. But the way they organized their meeting, you felt energized. You were excited about every speaker, and they even had time for table topics. So by visiting other clubs, it's another way for you to reach out to seek help. Talk to other officers, talk to other members, see why they're excited, and bring that back to your club. Now I get it. For some of you, this whole virtual meeting stuff is new. So it's counterintuitive to know exactly how to create intimacy in your virtual club meetings, but don't let that stop you. This is an opportunity, and if you stick with it, you can get there. By developing a virtual meeting strategy, building your structure for your meeting, your foundation, leaning in with every member, closing the ranks, leveraging your seasoned speakers and members to serve as mentors, and lastly, asking for help at the area, division, district level, or just visiting another club, you will get there. You have to just put one foot in front of the other. One of the things that we have seen, that although this COVID-19 has slowed us down a little bit, it's also awakened the undying spirit of us as humans to create and expand far beyond where we've ever been before. This is an opportunity. I invite all of you to take the first step to look to build intimacy in your club at your next virtual meeting. Arturo.
Great information, Lamont. If you get a chance, go down to the emoji at the bottom that you can do, the clapping of hands. It was excellent, excellent. And one of the key things that Lamont brought up that I really want to kind of highly emphasize is don't lose the human touch. That's what separates Toastmasters from other organizations, is that we're not an organization, we're family. And this is a time that we all step up and contact those individuals in our clubs to make sure they're okay. What the club can do for them as they try to navigate this new world we're in. I'll borrow a quote from one of my favorite books that says, the territory in front of us is not like the territory that we just passed. Everything is going to be new. And your voice, your encouragement is going to make a tremendous difference in the lives of our members. Remember, without the members, we're not an organization. I'll leave it open to see if anybody has questions for Lamont. I see one that came across on the setting the strategy point. Who or what club officer is responsible for strategy?
So I believe as the club officers, I think the president first and foremost sets the tone, but I think the creation of the should be collective from all of the executive officers. They each bring diverse experiences, and I think a strong and effective president will factor in those various of input to help craft a universal vision that represents the collective vision of the leadership.
Excellent, excellent. Anyone else have any questions for Lamont, as well as you'll see his email address on the PowerPoint slide if you want to contact him offline in regards to it. We will prepare now for our last speaker, and again at the end of this session we'll still leave time available if you have any additional questions. Our next presenter will be CJ Powers, Creating Value in a Virtual Meeting. He will cover creating value in a virtual meeting. He is a digital media expert, business consultant, author, and podcaster. Today, he will share the 3 important factors related to creating value in virtual meetings: relationship, focus, and visual preparation. Please give a warm welcome to CJ.
And the crowd goes nuts. Oh, this is always fun. You know, one of the hardest things for people to do is look straight into the camera and pretend it's humane in some way, shape, or form, so you can come across really well. And the reason that's a concern is because in the process here, we basically have a medium that is, okay, why did that beep? Okay, we'll do that. We have a medium that's actually built from the standpoint of being an intimate format. You know, we're used to broadcast television, and their messages are just bombarded on us over and over and over. When a lot of us were kids, you maybe saw 6 TV commercials an hour. Today, I think it's 12 minutes of commercials per hour today. So times have changed. We're being bombarded constantly, not only by the messages of the commercials, but within each of the shows are messages too. And you'll tend to see that there's waves of shows that happen as a result. But when it comes to the internet, it's a more intimate format. And we have to realize that and understand it, because it requires us to react differently. Instead of one person broadcasting to many from the standpoint of broadcast TV or radio, now it's a reach based on one-on-one. I am talking only to you right now. I'm not talking to anybody else. I'm just talking to you. Now, there happens to be many yous on this meeting, but I am speaking as if I'm speaking just to one person, and that's you. As a result, this can be an intimate conversation. Now, the other way to think of it, because it is intimate, is that it becomes a two-way form of communication. Now, it might be communicating through the chat with that chat window that can pop up on the side as we go through the meeting, or you pop off your audio and you can talk to me, then we go banter back and forth a little bit. We might be able to see each other, take turns sharing our screens. We might even, on some systems, have a whiteboard that we can both draw upon. And when we do that, it's true interactivity. So it's a much more intimate setting. So whenever we think internet, we have to think intimate. Now, because it's intimate, we have to learn how to treat each other from a face-to-face perspective. Face-to-face is critically important. You know, you see a lot of teenagers walking around and they're always looking down at their phone and they're bumping into people and doing all kinds of crazy stuff. The reason is because they're so focused on the gadgetry instead of the person at the other end. I literally was with a crowd of teenagers the other day. I asked them a question, and all of a sudden I saw them all popping things into their phone, and they were communicating back and forth to decide what answer they were going to give me collectively, which was pretty funny, actually. I suggested they all put their phones away for a moment, and we had an eye-to-eye conversation. Every one of them said it was the most bizarre experience they ever had, but it was invigorating. Now, of course, I grew up with those kinds of conversations, so I knew what to expect. They did not. So with internet, you have to be concerned about it being a face-to-face conversation. You're talking to the one person you're looking at, and you need to be able to be vulnerable to a certain extent, because people today look for authenticity. They want you to be genuine. Now, to be genuine, you also have to allow the relationship to build. And the best way to do that is to be a good listener. I know that sounds trite almost, but it's so true. How you listen determines how the meeting goes. If we all took our mics off mute and took turns trying to listen to each other and talk to each other, we would notice that there's a gap because of the satellite connections and so on. There's a gap in our conversation. And if we're trying to jump in all the time, we're going to dominate the soundtrack, automatically mute out some people that have some important things to share. So instead, we need to think more intimately. We need to give everybody a chance to voice their opinion. So by focusing on listening, we get to develop that. And we all know from Toastmasters that whenever you enter a room and you strike up new relationships, the people that love you the most aren't the ones that are impressed with your credentials. They're the ones that know that you actually listened to them, you considered what they said, and you gave them feedback that gave them confidence in the fact that you did indeed understand who they are. That's what people are looking for. Listening is very important for that. Now, the other thing we have to do is we have to consider that our eye position, because that's going to reveal whether or not we're really interested or not. If we have the gallery view up and I'm talking about things and I'm glancing around at all of you and you're kind of like, oh, da, 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 da. or one of you's got a book up there that you're reading, you know, I realize you're not interested at all in anything I'm saying. And that makes it really difficult for the speaker. Because it's such an intimate system, you're actually communicating maybe what you don't want to communicate. I know one woman the other day, I kind of called her out on it, and she said, well, CJ, you know what, I'm a multitasker. I can handle lots of things at the same time. So I was taking care of other things while I was listening to you. Well, I happen to do a lot of studying on multitasking and found out that there's no such thing as multitasking if you actually look at the definition of what that is. Multitasking means that you're trying to switch back and forth between doing things rapidly and you're not succeeding. There was a study done, actually. I was really impressed with it. They studied what happens to the brain when you multitask. And your ability to think quickly, or your IQ, in other words, actually drops while you're multitasking, lower than it does if you're using marijuana. So by multitasking, you'll be less effective than if you were just on marijuana. I found that absolutely fascinating. Anyway, back to intimacy. With intimacy, it's really important that we speak very succinctly and that we don't meander and get off track like I just did about the marijuana fact. So that's how not to do it. But let's move on to focus, because clearly that's the point I'm trying to make. Focus is our next key area with intimacy. Not only are we building that relationship, but we have to stay focused on the task at hand. We have to keep on topic and we have to avoid tangents like I just went into. Now, to do that, of course, if we're speaking consistently and concisely on our given topic with the key points like Lamont demonstrated a moment ago, and we don't drone on and on and on like I tend to do, then you're going to be far more successful. You're going to have a great relationship online, and it's going to be working for you. There's a little extra that you notice that can happen here is that you can also support your point with really good supportive information, whether it be anecdotes or facts or quotes or things like that, or as Lamont did, he had some cool imagery as well. Those things actually help a person to lock in what they just heard because they have that visual stimulus as well. Visuals, especially in a story format, help retention greatly. After tonight, and I've been talking to you, tomorrow morning, you're only going to remember 15% of what I said. The next morning, you're going to remember 10% of what you remembered from that next day. If I tell a story that's really intriguing and has you tied in with it, and you're caught up in the fact that, oh, I'm trying to achieve this within the story, and the outcome is perfectly related to my point, you're going to remember it for 3 weeks after I speak. So using some kind of anecdote that is really a true story format will do wonders for the point you're trying to make. The next thing we want to talk about is using the 3X structure. Now, we've all heard this in many, many different formats and ways. You have a beginning, a middle, and an end. That's your 3 acts. From Toastmasters perspective, we talk about introducing the point that you're about to talk about. We then talk about sharing your point with the supporting information. And then we talk about summarizing your point so that it is clear what the audience is taking home with them. So now it's time to get on to visual preparation. Now, visual preparation is an interesting hook because you need to, again, with this intimate format, look straight into the people's eyes. And the only way you can do that is by looking at your camera. If you are looking somewhere else, like at your notes, and you're looking at me, you're realizing that I'm not really connecting with you. So I have to be looking into the camera to be able to know and understand the connection that we have. To do this, you want to position the camera as close to eye level as possible. I tend to put it just a little bit below because it makes you a little bit more authoritative. If you put the camera a little bit above your head, you look like you're, you know, kind of wimpish. If you angle the camera angle and so on, different ways, that also changes things. After all, nobody wants to look at your nose hair or the top of your head, but those are things to be considerate of. And once these slides are out of the way, I'll do a quick demonstration of that. And then you need to properly light the area so people can actually see you well. You don't want to be backlit, because then you just become a shadow blob and they can't really see your face and your eyes. And again, with intimacy, people have to be able to see your eyes. So if you have glasses like I do, you notice that I have a non-glare glass so that you can actually see my eyes. The other day I was on with a woman who had nothing but white glossy lenses. So we had to teach her how to tilt her glasses slightly so she could still see, but we could then see her eyes, and made a huge difference. The other thing that you want to be able to do is be able to prepare any shared media you have in advance, because last second clicking around and trying to shift just doesn't work. And I've proven that many, many times. I am the perfect person to show you how not to do it. But just to try and redeem myself, I have a little clip that theoretically is prepared, so we're going to give it a try. Okay, hopefully you heard that and didn't just see it, but I'm seeing a head nod no that you didn't hear it, which means that there was a technical thing when I hit the button. Okay, so here's an interesting point. It just so happens that when it comes to some online systems, it for some reason automatically takes the video and audio. When it comes to Zoom, they have a little box when you go to click on sharing. The first thing that pops up is a whole bunch of windows of all the different windows you have open on your screen for you to select it. But if you're not paying attention, there's a little teeny checkbox in the bottom left-hand corner. And of course you don't notice it because you're looking for the screen you're wanting to share. And you have to click that before you click the screen. And if you don't remember that, like I keep on forgetting, people can't hear your show. So how does that hit you? So anyway, at this point, what I'd like to do is just open this up to questions and see if you have any, and I'll answer them for you.
You didn't have a chance to talk about sound. Can you talk about sound?
Sure, I'll talk about sound. Whenever you're in an online meeting, you want to be as intimate as you can. So you notice I have ear pads in today, or ear pods, or earbuds, whatever the heck they're called. And I'm sorry, I keep on forgetting whatever this stuff is called. It's funny that I know all this technology stuff and yet I don't know what to call it. Oh, well. This is as intimate as possible because it shows more of my face. If you have to be focused to actually see it. If you're looking at my eyes and stuff, you're not even knowing that I have it on. What a lot of people do though, they try and use the sound directly off their computer. And they think, oh, well, it works fine for me. And what they don't realize is that depending on how fast their computer is, their sound is coming out of the speaker, part of it's being picked up by their microphone, and it's being sent back to the meeting, and it can create a feedback loop that makes it really, really hard for other people to hear. And the people are convinced that, oh no, I hear you fine, and you can hear me, so it must be good. No, it's not good. You have to have earphones on if you're going to use the laptop mic or the computer mic. I, however, always suggest you use a different mic The key is to make sure the sound that's going out is separated from the sound that's coming in, so there can't be any feedback loops. And whenever you're not talking, you want to mute it. The reason you want to mute it is because every single room has what's called a room tone. Some rooms are filled with what's called white noise. Some rooms are filled with pink noise. There's different noises in different rooms. Now, they've been named that because the kind of sounds and the coloration of the sounds that they actually create when you're looking at the scopes. But the bottom line is you have to understand that every room that you're in has tones to it. And if those tones keep on playing and feeding back, it gets really hard to listen. I was listening to a church thing on Sunday. I have taken it upon myself to visit 2 or 3 different churches that are online every Sunday lately, just because there's such differences between them, and it's fascinating to see how they work. And this one church is just in the person's living room right now, of course, because of the stay-at-home request. And the daughter's playing the keyboard, and the dad's the pastor, so he's going to do the preaching of the message. But they were sharing one microphone, and it was also the speaker unit. So they were creating their own feedback. And if the keyboard played a certain note, that continued for the next 5 or 6 minutes. Even though the piano had stopped playing it, that tone continued to cycle through the system over and over and over again. And it was absolutely fascinating because, of course, they had no clue that because their microphone and their speakers were not separate lines, they thought it must be fine. Everyone assumes their own system is fine. So you have to have a separate mic and a separate headphone. That's the best way to explain it. I hope that answers your question, Stella, or if you wanted some other kind of detail.
It's great. Thank you.
Any other questions?
CJ,
Yes.
the creating a virtual background or using a green screen seems pretty obvious, but is there a way to create a mini studio for sound very quickly? Are there any things out there for that?
When you say mini studio for sound, I automatically think of podcasting because that's the highest quality of sound control you can have. And typically, you're getting into regular headsets at that point. And then also, you usually have a professional microphone. And depending on how the microphone is set up, depends on the quality that you get. Now, I happen to have an armature for my podcast. And this microphone actually has 4 different mics built into it. The main one I use is a cardioid mic. So I have to speak sideways into the microphone to get the proper sound. You've probably seen people that, that my pet peeve is when a person like at a youth group, for instance, will use a music microphone to give a message, and they'll talk into it and give the message with a music microphone. The reason that's a pet peeve of mine is because music microphones are designed so that your mouth is within an inch of the microphone. But whenever someone gives a message, they hold it 8 inches to 10 inches away from their mouth. And the microphone cannot handle that. So that means the person doing the soundboard has to do all kinds of extra things to try to make it sound halfway decent. And it sets the person up for failure without even knowing that they're set up for failure. The other thing is when you go to watch like the Oscars or an award show, you notice they have these tall, long stands with the teeny mic on it, and the mic is like 5 feet away from them. And people, for some reason, and these are professionals that use microphones all the time, but for some reason they feel like they have to bend over and get as close to the mic as they can. Well, those particular mics, you want to be about 5 feet away from them for the proper sound. So whenever they bend over, the guys up in the sound booth are going, hey, yeah, yeah, yeah. And they have to do all kinds of things to change stuff so that it will sound halfway decent. But if the person would just have stood a couple feet back and just talked normally, that little teeny microphone would have done a fantastic job. So you really have to understand what kind of mic you're using for what purpose. Does that help? Okay. Any other questions?
A quick question, CJ, regarding the earbuds that you're wearing. Did you dial into the into the Zoom directly from your phone?
No, I always come in through the computer, because if you go in through your phone, your voice is out of sync automatically.
Oh,
If you come in through the computer, your voice is in sync most of the time. But if you're in by phone, you're automatically out of sync. But what I did learn finally on Zoom, because Zoom is different than the other operating systems I've used, if you go to the caret next to the mute button, there's an audio setting area. And no matter what your computer is set for, Zoom will not read your computer settings. So you have to reset your audio inside of Zoom. And the other day when I had given a presentation, I couldn't demonstrate shifting over because I was doing it with my computer and Zoom was blocking it from happening. So I've learned now that Zoom, actually, you have to go into Zoom's audio setting for that to work.
so did you sync your, or I should say pair up your earbuds with the laptop?
Yes.
Okay, I never did that before. Interesting.
Yeah, so my earbuds are linked through Bluetooth.
To do that. It was a great presentation, CJ, and I'll mention just two things in particular that definitely caught my attention. Was now that our team is meeting virtual, our managers required us all to use video. The reason why is we're multitasking. And she wants to ensure that we're all paying attention. If you don't have your video on, she will call you out.
Which means you better be looking at your camera then too.
See, that's the problem. I got these two big screens and I've developed kind of like lizard eyes to where I can look at both of them. But she called me out once.
There you go.
She goes, I know you're
There
looking
you
at
go.
something over to the right, aren't you, Artur? I'm going, I thought it was a document. She goes, no, you got to be 100% focused. And then the second thing I thought was great, because that goes back to what Lamont and Cassandra was saying, that creates the intimacy when we're all using our cameras.
Right. Yeah, there's a big difference between a person looking at their camera and a person not. There's also a big difference too. You know, if I was set up in my shot like this, you know, I look so unprofessional this way. And then there's the people that set up their camera like this, and it's like, okay, why are you showing the ceiling? You really should never be showing the ceiling. So there's all kinds of tips like that to make sure you're coming across professionally. But today's session was more about intimacy than professionalism.
Well, I like what you shared on, I think it was on a Sunday call, about how you can put a box underneath your laptop to lift it up a little bit higher to where you have that eye level.
Oh yeah,
Which is so important to do.
I have a sample right here. All you have to do is buy some envelopes and stick them underneath your computer. I happen to have two boxes. One is under my computer right now.
Excellent. Well, just for a brief moment, I know we're going to about 8:04. Does anybody have a really good question they'd like to ask CJ or anybody else on the panel before we wrap up? Stella?
I do. I have a question in regards to how do you prepare your screen, your desktop, so you are ready to share your screen and have your presentations ready?
I'm assuming that question's for me.
Anybody, or especially you, CJ. Yes.
Okay, so as far as preparation goes, if you have a Mac, the biggest key is that sometimes we have virtual screens, as you know. You can store certain things on 3, 4, or 5 different screens at the same time. So you always have a clean desktop when you're working on different projects. Whichever desktop you're choosing for a Zoom conference, you need to have all your open files on that same desktop. If it's between desktops, Zoom can't control that. It doesn't like it at all. It prefers it when you have it all on one desktop. Windows, I don't know if Windows is the same way or not. It's been a long time since I've used Windows for, well, of course, I've never used Windows with Zoom. I have used it with Skype. And again, that was the same thing. You needed to be on the screen that you're Skyping with.
Yeah, for Windows, I can speak to that. So from a Windows perspective, I had my PowerPoint queued up. And as my intro was being brought in, I hit the share the screen button, and then I could see my PowerPoint sitting there. That way I could enable it and then go ahead and put it in a presentation mode. So I kind of use that during my intro to actually queue up my presentation so that it's ready for me to flow into it by the time my intro is done.
Okay, and the only thing I would do different there, Lamont, is that I would actually put it in slideshow mode first before I have to share.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure that part out.
Yeah.
Lamont, give me a call. I can show you.
I got you, Larry.
I think Christine has a quick question.
CJ, if you have a Mac, you're using Keynote?
I use PowerPoint, but I do have Keynote
Okay.
as well.
I asked just because my experience has been in trying to share Keynote in presenter view with Zoom every single time my computer has locked up. And so I've kind of defaulted to not using the presenter view. So maybe offline you could teach me how to use my Mac with some sort of presentation software and presenter view.
Sounds good. Yeah,
Thank
I
you.
can do that.
Great. Does anybody else have any questions?
I don't have a question. I have a simple solution, and that is that I have this little device here, which is meant to cover my camera lens, but you see it has a smiley face on it. I clip it on the back of my monitor, and I have a face I can focus upon. If you don't have one of these, you can take and draw a little happy face on a piece of paper and tape it on the monitor right next to your lens. Guess what? You have something to focus on. It helps you keep concentrated into a specific position.
I see another future career there for Larry. He could be up there like with the pillow guy endorsing these things. Great
Yeah,
job.
the only problem with Larry's system is that he happens to have a microphone next to his lens, and when he put it up there, his sound changed because he blocked the sound flow.
Wow.
So make sure your microphone is elsewhere if you go to do that.
Microphone is on my headset.
Oh, really? Well,
Yes,
then
it
why
might
is
have
it
been
that
my,
it shifted when you did that?
it must have been shifting her when I moved my arm.
Oh, yeah,
okay,
that makes
that's probably
sense.
what it was then. Okay.
Excellent. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank all of you for joining us, and especially Cassandra, Lamont, and CJ for the wonderful job they did. I'm thinking about launching in about 2 weeks a professional development series that will tackle things like writing a resume, building a LinkedIn profile, interviewing skills, and networking. If any of that's of interest to you that you would like to present, by all means, send me an email. This is something we may do 1 or 2 a week, because again, it's going to give more tools to our members to allow them, if they have to reinvent themselves as we kind of emerge into this new business world. I'd like to thank everybody again for being on the call and participating. Have a wonderful night. Wish you all the best, a lot of health and wellness for you and your family. Thank you very much. Take care.
Thank you
Great
all
job.
very much. Great job. Thank you
Thank you.
so much, Cassandra, Arturo, CJ, Lamont. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Virtual hugs.